Yes! What's up everybody, my name is Spencer Harris. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we are talking about the new PolarPro ND and polarizer filters for the Mavic Air 2. Now first off, I just have to say I have no affiliation with PolarPro or anything like that. I actually had to buy these, pre-order them, and then wait for them to come in the mail. I got them on Friday, and I was super excited. I was waiting for that package for about 2 to 3 weeks, and when it came, I just couldn't have been happier. I was excited to get these for a couple of reasons. A, for video, flying a drone without NDs is sort of like eating a pizza with no toppings. Like, sure, you can do it, but it's just so much better with toppings. And B, I love PolarPro's filters. I love them as a company, and on my original Mavic Air, I basically never ever took off I think it was the ND8 that it lived on the drone. As always with PolarPro's products, these things have been thought out methodically. They're made with their Cinema series glass and also made with aerospace aluminum to make sure that the gimbal doesn't get overloaded. So as you can imagine, I was super excited to get these NDs for the new Mavic Air 2. Let's talk installation. Installation, I didn't know really how these were gonna work. On the original Mavic Air, you just kind of screwed them onto the outside of the lens. With the Mavic Air 2, the shape of the lens is a bit different, so I wasn't sure how it was gonna work, but it is incredibly easy. It's way easier than I thought it was gonna be. It's stupid easy. All you have to do is just kind of hold the gimbal steady, and you'll see this indentation part around the lens. You're just going to cock that to the left a little bit and then pull it out. It's that easy. If you want to put it back on, you put it on at the angle and then turn it clockwise. I took off the original, it's just a frame, there's not even any glass in this. And first thing I did was put the 8 on at an angle and then turn it clockwise and you're good to go. It's easy. It's incredibly easy. Now to get the least amount of polarization, you want to have it pointed left or right, and then to get the most amount of polarization, you want to have it pointed up or down. And you do that by just twisting the little gold part of the lens here. Very easy. Now, as someone who shoots a lot of video, why are NDs important? Well, we need them to keep our shutter speed at the correct speed, which is, you guessed it, double your frame rate. And what this does is this is going to keep that cinematic motion blur happening in your footage. It's the mathematical equation to help just the frames and the way the camera works to give you that nice motion blur as you're shooting. Now, what does the polarization element do? Well, the polarization element is taking away any glares or reflections that you might be shooting. So if you're shooting over water, or you're shooting buildings in downtown, or you're shooting into a window or whatever, adjusting your polarizer is going to take away those reflections. That's why when you see someone maybe shooting into a car or something like that, they most likely have a polarizer added onto their lens to get rid of that glare happening from the glass. It's also going to add a little bit of saturation for you as well, so the skies usually tend to be a little bit bluer, but you can take that away or add to that the more you dial into that polarization. ND filters are extremely important, especially when it comes to drones, because we don't have the option to adjust our aperture. I know the Mavic Pro 2 you can adjust the aperture, but I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the other drones it's just a fixed aperture, and this happens to be a 2.8. In order to dial in our exposure, normally we would be able to play around with our aperture, but we don't get that opportunity with a drone, so it's super important to have a ND or a variable ND to really hone in our exposure. So with that in mind, really the only thing we're looking at is shutter speed. So it's extremely important, especially if you're shooting video on a drone, to have some sort of ND filter. So over the weekend, I was able to take out the Mavic Air 2 and test out these NDs from PolarPro, and I gotta tell you, I was super impressed. Now, when I did shoot, I was shooting at 24 frames a second and aiming for a 1/50th shutter speed, and I went out and shot at 1:30 to 2 in the afternoon, so I just made sure it was the brightest conditions to really test these NDs out. Now, when I first took the drone up, I was aiming for a 1/50th shutter speed because I was shooting 24 frames a second. Because I didn't have any exterior elements on the lens, I wasn't able to get that. I actually had to crank the shutter speed all the way up to 1/800, and that's exactly how I got my exposure. Definitely not preferable. So I flew the drone back to me, I put on the ND16, and I was able to then, as you can see here, get the shutter speed down to 1/100. Now, still keep in mind, I was shooting 24 frames a second, so that is double the shutter speed that I really was kind of aiming for. Then I flew it back and I put on the ND16 and I adjusted the polarizer about halfway, and you can see here I nailed 1/50th shutter speed. My battery did run out before I was able to throw on the ND32, but to be honest with you, I got the 3-pack for the Mavic Air original and I never once put on the 32. So, and I don't know what you would actually use the 32 for, but if you've ever used one, please let me know the situation in which you were able to. I just feel like it'll be too dark, and maybe if you're shooting straight into the sun at a really nice sunset, that'll work then. I don't know, we'll see, but I was not able to test out the 32. So would I recommend these to you? Absolutely I would. And like I said at the beginning, I've got no affiliation with PolarPro. I just really love their products. I think they're thought out. I think, you know, the installation is super easy. The image that we get out of it is really, really, really good. And yeah, absolutely. Go out and get some. And that's it for me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Let me know you're here. And subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you on the next video.